Hi, folks. I'm just going to give you a brief run through of what's up for week two. If you followed my posting of videos throughout the week, you've already noticed I've added my sort of take, musings, etc., about both Dickinson and Whitman and kind of guided you through those folders. But I'll do a more sort of point by point approach to week two. Hopefully, this is not going to be a long video, but it will give you sort of the tools that you need to move forward with week number two. Okay, I'm going to screen share our. Okay, so let me go to our home page first of all. Um, so we go to course content here. I want to show you some things that I've added just to give you the heads up here. Under general poetry resources, I've added a playlist, a video playlist of a very entertaining, knowledgeable guy going through some basic literary terms and what they mean in some short videos. Um, Not an exhaustive list of literary terms, but some very nice, sort of a nice handful, right, that are useful to you. He does the same thing with various different literary theories. And again, if you're going to write an essay for your poetry project, I'm asking you to adopt a critical lens, right? A lot of you are seniors, a lot of you are English majors, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you are not, uh, this is going to give you a refresher about critical lenses, about literary theory. This is a really great summary of the working literary theories that a lot of folks gravitate towards, and it in the descriptions will ask will detail the questions that those particular literary theories tend to contend with, right? The types of questions that, for example, a feminist critic might ask when approaching a text, or a new historicist might ask when approaching a text, um, and so on, right? Um, Again, this course is based on effort and what you put into it. I'm not asking you to be an expert in literary theory any more than I'm asking you to be an expert in poetry, but I am asking for demonstration of effort, right? So again, we got a couple weeks before the literary project, excuse me, the poetry project takes center stage, but it's good to begin thinking about that, right? So, and then I've also added this link to this podcast, and it lists various platforms that you can access it through: Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, etc., and so on, right? But this podcast is essentially poets reading poetry and talking about their poems or other people's poems that they find meaningful. And so again, just like with the Ars Poetica up here, if you're not necessarily feeling the readings for the week and you want to remain immersed in poetry, which is really kind of my goal for the term, one of my goals for the term, is for everyone to immerse themselves in poetry, uh, not constantly, but um a couple of poems a day is probably not too much to ask. Listening to or reading a couple poems a day when you're taking a class on poetry is probably not too much to ask. But anyway, this podcast is very useful with that, and there's like 8 seasons of it, right? So there's a lot that you can draw upon. Okay, let's move to week two. All right, back up to course content. going to week two. All right, so Poe, Dick Whitman, and Dickinson. Um, we look at Poe. This documentary is fairly good. It's the old. It was produced for the old A&E series biography, which growing up, my teenage and early 20s, so forth. That this was sort of a staple for me is watching a lot of A&E's biography, but um, it's fairly good, and you get to learn about all the tragedy in Poe's life, how he overcomes it, how he uses literature in a lot of ways, writing in a lot of ways to do that. Um, the Raven performed by Christopher Lee, you can't beat that. And then various video interpretations of the Raven. Again, something like a performance of a poem, a video representation of a poem, and so forth. Those are in effect literary projects, if you will, or poetry projects. They are engaging their projects, their endeavors, engaging um, a piece of poetry in a creative and innovative way, and that's what I'm going to ultimately ask you to do for your poetry project. So when you look at, for example, like Aaron Quinn's The Raven or Aaron Quinn's Annabelle Lee, think about the decisions that he makes in his video, you know, and how that affects the reading of the piece or the presentation of the piece, um, the what that is emphasizing, right? Here's a basic analysis of the Raven, and here's a video for those folks that are interested in rhyme and meter and so forth. Um, this video discusses that in reference to the Raven. Okay. Um, we'll get a lot more into prosody, if you will, in week three. Um, there's a fantastic lecture in two parts in the William Carlos Williams folder by Allen Ginsberg, where he really, and that's particularly in that second video, breaks down rhyme and meter and so forth, particularly meter in the English language and where it comes from and how it develops. This is really, really nice. So if you're interested in that, I would direct you to um, the two videos on William Carlos Williams prosody in week three, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. Um, and again, we have a song, just like we had Iron Maiden's interpretation of Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner for week one. We have a song by Stevie Nicks interpreting Poe's Annabelle Lee, and then again, there's the analysis thereof, right? Um, so let's move along here. Again, back to course content. Week two. For Whitman and Dickinson, I've pretty much already gone through the contents of the folders um, with you. Uh, and uh, again, watch my videos. If you don't do anything else with Whitman and Dickinson, please watch my videos where I talk about Whitman and Dickinson, and maybe that will inspire you to read some of the works that I have here, and or to think about them and think about their contributions, particularly to American poetry, but really to all poetry in the English language post Whitman and Dickinson, right? Um, all right, moving along here. Here we go. I can better navigate there now. Okay, let's look at the assignments for this week. So you've got your first poetry journal that's technically due on Wednesday, the 17th. Again, I am not uh, during the flow of the semester a stickler on late work in terms of, I'm not going to count it against you. You definitely have to turn everything in. You must turn everything in, but I'm not going to be like, oh, well, this is this is 2 days late, so you only get half credit, something like that. I'm not going to do that. I'm just not. But but I will say, and I said this in the syllabus as well, if you want feedback on anything, you need to submit it on time. That's just the way it is, right? So if you want my feedback on something, please submit it on time or early, right? And I've already had at least one poetry journal submitted. What I'm asking you to do for this is to write a cohesive one-page double-spaced essay, um, basically about, you know, thinking about, exploring what you've been reading, in terms of poetry, be it what we're reading for a class, what you've been reading on your own, and really talk about, how that's affecting you and what you're thinking about it, and try to be specific, quote some language and talk about the language, right? It, you know, I'm only asking for a page, and you're going to get 100 points essentially for doing it. The only exception is if you just really try to put one over on me, if you're like using 14-point font and you only write half a page or something like that, I'm not going to give you full credit for that. That's in other words, if I can tell you didn't put any effort into it, right? That's 50 points. But really, everything as it says right here is based on effort, right? It's based on what you're putting forward. And that's essentially what the poetry journal is doing, is it's getting into your thought processes, your reflection, etc., on what you are reading. Now, you also on Saturday the 20th have a discussion board due. Okay. So you've all done discussion board one. There is one holdout. I'm not gonna call anybody. There's two holdouts. I'm not gonna call anybody by name. One person hasn't submitted anything for discussion one, but I was in communication with them, so they are still in the course. And another person has not commented on somebody else's post. And again, that is a requirement. You have to respond to at least one of the person's post, the person's thread, I should say, to receive full credit, right? So if you're looking and you're like, well, I turned this in over a week ago. How come I don't have a score for um, discussion board one? The reason being is because um, you didn't comment on somebody else's post yet. Once you do that, I will gladly score your post. Okay. Um, so if again, the format is uh the same as last time, and I'm asking you for some brief, cohesive paragraphs about one of these topics, not all of them, one of them. Okay. Uh, Discuss the British and or American romantic approaches to death, right? So there's a lot of options there. You can talk about Keats's approach to death. Uh, you can talk about Whitman's approach to death. You can talk about Dickinson's approach to death. Again, watch those videos. They give you some ideas. You can talk about Coleridge, Coleridge's approach, and you can talk about or you can talk about how they differ, right? There is some slight variance in Whitman's approach to death as to Dickinson's, and things like that. So think about that. Discuss the role of imagination in romantic poetry. If have been following the readings at all, or the documentaries, etc., you're well aware of this. Um, Discuss Whitman's concept of the self. Okay. Again, uh, you know, take a deep dive into Song of Myself, and um and see what you come up with. You don't even really have to um you know, and you can watch my video, you can watch the documentary on Whitman, read any number of his poems that I didn't, specifically point out. Like I sing the body electric, right? You know, stuff like that, and you get a pretty significant concept of Whitman's concept of the self, right? Um, and I'm not really asking you to parrot information here, right? Um, when you do these entries, obviously, point out what your understanding of something like Whitman's concept of the self, for example, but also engage with it, right? What do you think about it? How does it relate to your concept of the self? Things like that, right? Um, and then lastly, I give you this out. So discuss your own significant takeaways from one or more of the assigned works from the last 2 weeks. Again, be specific. So if you want to talk about Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, engage with Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, quote some language, that kind of thing, right? Um, but again, I'm only asking you to respond to one of these, okay? Same thing, your initial thread is 50 points, and then your response to at least one other person's post is is another 50 points. And again, the reason that I don't know that I've explained this yet, but the reason that I'm dividing this, instead of just giving you a straight 100 for posting your thread, is I'm trying to foster, uh, you know, interaction, by way of the discussion board. Um, And so far, it's worked out well. Y'all are engaging for the most part, engaging with one another. Some of the posts, some of the threads have like 7 responses on them. Um, you know, for discussion forum one, right? So that's good, and I'm impressed with that. Um, so that's my overview of week 2. Um, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me via email. I will, of course, be interjecting throughout next week, adding material for the following week, um, you know, sending out announcements occasionally, that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, I hope you're enjoying the course so far. And again, um, just reach out to me if need be. Okay.